Hello everyone, Hammad here. Welcome to my channel, Cloud with Hammad, DIY cloud learning to inspire. Today on our web series, I will be deploying a highly available fault-tolerant solution on Amazon Cloud Services. But before we do that, if you are new to my channel, please don't forget to hit that subscribe. And if you're returning to my channel and you really enjoy watching my video, don't forget to hit that like button. I would really appreciate it. Thank you. Now, without further delay, let's get back to our notes for us to review an objective. Our objective today is to deploy web application on Amazon EC2 instance with Elastic Load Balancer in front of the web application server, and also will deploy a database, Microsoft SQL database. I will be deploying the solution on 2 available zones within AWS and making sure that once I provision those applications in 2 private subnets, and then also making sure that we configure them to be highly available and they will be fault tolerant as well. So during this, I will be using Northern Virginia region, and this deployment will include 1 VPC and 2 public and 3 private subnets. 2 web servers should be installed on the private subnet, and then we also will install 1 RDS database on the private subnet. For us to connect to these private subnets, we will be installing a jump box. We call it a Bastion Host, and we'll use that on the public network, public subnet, to connect to private subnet. During this, we will also deploy an internet gateway, also a NAT gateway for private machines. Means that private web server to go outside, which means that they should be able to google.com through NAT gateway, and we'll be using CIDR block of 1016. All right, so this is a summary. I also have a cheat sheet for myself so that I can follow to ensure that the name tags are also there. Let's further move to our console before further delay. I already logged in up here onto Amazon console. First of all, we're going to start doing deploying VPC. Let's click on to VPC, and we will create a VPC. And I'm just going to use my name so that it's easier for me to remember. And then we'll do a 10.0.0.0/16 CIDR block. A tenancy, I will just leave it as default. If I do dedicated, means that I am just dedicatedly using that real estate space for my machine, and which I don't want because it's going to cost too much money. So let's leave it to default. Tags are there. We will hit create VPC, and then once we create VPC, we have 3 things that are open. So always remember, when we deploy a VPC, we get route table generated, and then we got security group, and then we also have network access control list. So these are the 3 things that gets deployed when you deploy a VPC. One of the things that I would just say that, always make sure you have this name of VPC copied so it's easier for you to search for your machine. It always helps. You'll go through, once we go through the exercise, you would know why I am copying this. It's easier for me to manage my machines and my deployment. So we get here to route table. Once again, we paste the EC2, the VPC. There's a default route that got open. I'll actually give them a name of, I'll just give them, you can do AWS cloud or whatever the way it sounds like. I'll just do RT-A. Private. This is not a public facing. We'll save it, and then we will get into route table. Like I said, when we created a VPC, it basically created a route table, which was a default. It also created a security group, which is also a default, and a network access control list. So in order for me to search my security group, I would just put in my VPC ID, and I should have a default security group. Same thing, SG, AWS Cloud, HS, and then also same thing here, put in my VPC ID, and I would just go ahead and hit, this is NACL, Network Access Control List, AWS, Cloud, HS, and I would save that. Okay, so our next step would be to create subnet. On my cheat sheet, it also says step 2 to hit the subnet. So what we'll do is we'll get to create subnet. Okay, and then we need to start creating our subnet. Okay, before we do that, I also want to make sure that before we do that, let's click on to, I also put all my notes in my GitHub repo. So you can always go to my repo. My repo starts with Hammad Hub. You get to my page, click repo, and then click on to AWS. You should see a Word document which basically tells the summary of what we did. Also, I put a project here. It has every step-by-step that is up on this page. So I pasted up there. Feel free to go ahead and grab them. Let's back to my VPC. So on this create subnet, I will select my VPC, and we will go ahead and start creating our first subnet. So I already have a cheat sheet open. I'll just, for the sake of not thinking as to what I'm going to give the name, I just put it up here. This is on US East 1, subnet 1, and then we'll just select the zone. And then for CIDR block, I'll just do 10.0.1.0/24. We'll keep it for 24 CIDR block. And then we'll go to our next one. And this is 1B for public subnet. So what we're doing is we're creating 2 public subnet, one in zone A and 1A, and then one in zone 1B. It will help us to deploy a load balancer when we get to deploying one. Just for now, we'll make sure that I clear that out. 0.2.0/24. Tags are there. Go ahead and deploy my third subnet. This is our all private subnet. Also, we are looking for zone 1A, private, subnet 3. We'll just do a 10.0.3.0/24. Then we'll get to our fourth subnet. This is also a private subnet, but this will be in zone 2, which is 1B. Click here, 1B, 10.0. This is what, 4? So we'll just 4.0/24. And then we'll go ahead and deploy our final subnet. This is where I will be deploying my RDS database, but this is also on the private subnet. This will not be exposed to internet. So 5, we'll do a 1B zone. We'll do a 10.0.0.5.0/24. And then we'll go ahead and hit create. I want to make sure that everything is all good. First, we have a public subnet with 1.0 and 1A. Second subnet, 2.0 in zone 2, that is US East 1B. This is also public. And then we have 3 private subnets, which are 3.0 on 1A, 4.0 on 1B, and then 5.0 on 1B as well. So 5 subnets, 3 privates, and 2 public. And go ahead and hit create. All right, so our subnets are created. These are all the subnets. One of the things that I always say, the easiest way for me to locate my subnets is use my VPC. So copying this VPC is very important and easy. You don't have to, but I think it's easier for you to, if you have a lot of subnets in your domain console, easier for you to put in your VPC and you will have all of those listed here. All right, so all our subnets are created, and next thing is we will look for our next step. Just making sure that they are all 2 public and 3 private. And our next step would be subnet association. Actually, there we deployed gateway. We can do that as well and attach those gateway to our subnet. So let's get here, hit Internet Gateway. Once we get to Internet Gateway, create your gateway name, Cloud HS.IGW, Internet Gateway, create. Once we create that gateway, yes, it is created, but it will not do anything unless you attach that internet gateway to a VPC. So what happened is, so far we have created a network and we have defined the subnets, which is 2 public, 3 private. And after that, we have deployed an internet gateway for those subnet. Anything that we deploy, any machine that will deploy on those subnet, we want to make sure that subnet connects to internet. So the public subnet will deploy an internet gateway, will attach that internet gateway to our subnet or to our VPC, which will have a subnet. So over here, it says the following internet gateway was created. You can now attach to VPC to enable the VPC to communicate with the internet. So hit connect, attach. You will hit the drop down. You have my VPC here. Will attach to our VPC. So now our VPC has a gateway that you can go out to. Now the next step would be to associate subnets our subnets to, basically, we'll go into a route table and we'll associate that route to internet gateway. All right, so we come here, we'll go ahead and click onto these route tables. In route table, we have only one route. That is, if you click here, it says, hey, you know what? The following subnets have not been explicitly associated with any route table and therefore and associated with the main table. So what we're doing is since we have 3 private and 2 public, all of these are defaultly created in our private subnet. So what we'll do is we will create another route table, which will be a public route table, and we'll make sure that all these route tables, public route tables, and this subnet is associated, the public subnet is associated with that public route table. It is a little confusing, but it will make sense once I create that. It just makes more easier. I will just use route table, my name, attached to my VPC, and I will hit create. Okay, let me explain this one more time so it's easier and without confusion yourself. So when we created the VPC, it created a default route, which is considered to be a private route. The next step was we created subnets. We created 2 subnets for public facing, 3 subnets for private facing. Now, after doing that, we attached our internet gateway to our VPC, and then we came to a route table. At that route table, we had 5 subnets. If you look up down here, we have 5 subnets that are created. For all of them are basically private, so they are not like internet facing. So the next step is what I did was I created another route table that I will associate only public subnet to those route table. So over here, if I look up here on private, I will associate these subnets to my public route. So hit associate. And since this is private, I will just leave private, like so. If I click here, private, private, and private. I will associate these subnet to that private subnet, and then I will also associate these two subnets to, let me do this here. Okay, and then once I get up here, public, and associate, and we want to make sure that the public one are associated with public table. And then also, since we are going to make sure that these routes, the public routes, are connected going, and so anything that I deploy, that means that the jump box that I will deploy in public subnet 1, and then that jump box need internet connection, because without that, we won't be able to get outside or even connect to the machine. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and hit route. Once I get to the route, I will hit edit route, and we'll add a route. We'll make sure any traffic that gets here connect to internet gateway, and then save the route. So now we have a route that is going out to internet gateway. That's about it. So let me recap what I did. We created a VPC. So we created a VPC. That VPC created a default route, a default NACL, and default security group. And then after that, we went in and we created 5 subnet, 2 private, 2 public, and 3 private. And what we did was, once we did that, the goal was to deploy a jump box in public network, and then 3 machines, IIS, 2 IIS in private, and the 4th one in public. So if I look up here, we have created 5 subnet, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One is public, and the NAT gateway will be in the public, and then 1 IIS machine in private, and another one in private, and then RDS, the 5th one. Let's go back to our page. I keep opening that page accidentally. So our next step is to start deploying the machine. Okay, so we have this ready. Now the step would be to deploy a EC2 machine. We are not deploying a NAT gateway right now because we don't need that right now. So we'll get onto EC2. You can get to EC2 by typing it here, EC2. This is just like a VM in Azure, or you can just select VM EC2 from here. We will deploy 3 machines. One in public and 2 in private. So get to this page. We'll hit launch instance. This is Amazon machine image location where all the images are. We will just use the free tier one, and then we'll just do a 2016 base. On this, we will be deploying 1 IIS on private subnet, and this will be in 2 subnets that I will do install eligible. This is a family. You can see all the T1, T2, T3. This is a family of EC2 machines, T2 micro, 1 CPU, 1 GB of memory. EBS is only, low to moderate, and click next. I will do actually another video that will just be deep dive on EC2 machine and what it does. So over here on the next tab, I want to make sure that we're deploying 1 instance, and that will be in our cloud VPC, and then we'll deploy this in the private subnet 3, and we won't be enabling the IP because we'll keep this as a private subnet, private IP, and then these are all the specs you don't need to know right now, but hit next. general purpose SSD. If you're doing a highly input output, you can select one of those and it will change the IOPS. But right now we're just doing a basic lab. We'll just keep it to 100 megabits input and 3000 output. Next, oh, and before we do that, previously you were not able to encrypt it, but now you can. If you want to encrypt your machine, you can do it from here. Click next, and then you want to tag it, name, and then I'm sure I would do web 01. Click next, and for RDP we will allow 3389 to remote into the machine. We also will allow HTTP for load balancer. Once we get there, we'll just give them a name, SG AWS Cloud allow RDP HTTP. I think that name would not go through well. Let me see. Also, we want to make sure that anywhere is fine. We can do it custom as well. And hit next. And hit launch. Create a new key pair. We will create a new key pair. Or we can use an existing one. Click launch, and it says that, yeah, that's what it is. It just does not let me save that name for, I would just do AWS Cloud. Security-AWS. It didn't. There was a security. I actually already have a security group, SG-AWS Cloud, and that's what the error message was. It was saying, hey, you cannot have two names. You already have that. So I'll just do this cloud. I would just do dash 3389 and then 80 dash allow. You can give whatever name you want. I'm just running it on the fly here. Click next, launch, and then, I think I already have it, but let's create one as well, just to be safe side. And I would just give them a name. I would say highly available. Oh, I'll just give my name. Download. See, I already had some of the name. We'll just use this one here. And I will hit launch instance. And we are ready for launching our one instance. We'll go ahead and launch another one. Same thing. 2016 base. You can pick anyone which is free eligible, but I just use this one easier. Next. This is make sure I have my VPC selected. This time we will doing in 4 because we already did the third one. We'll make sure that this is not public facing. We'll disable the IP already there. Default is already disabled. Everything remains the same. Next, and then we'll just do 2. Next, and we'll just use an existing one, which is this one. Next, and then next we'll use the existing key pair. I think it's under my name. Acknowledge, and hit launch, and launch again. Okay, so we did 2 web servers. If I go back up on my note, we have created 2 web servers, IS on one of the subnet 3 and then subnet 4. Now we'll install a Bastion host, which is to connect from my public subnet to all these machines. Right now, it's not connected to the internet. So if I make a line here, you should make it make sense. So we'll deploy another one on public subnet 1, I would say. Launch another instance. You can pick any machine. I would use the same one just for the sake of it. 2016 base. This is our Bastion Host. Next, same thing, VPN. This time we are using, so see, this is intelligent. So it just picked up a public subnet, and this is, want to make sure that it auto assigns an IP address. And if you don't understand, let me explain this again. We are bastioning, we're jumping from public to private. So we used our VPC, we use subnet 1, which is a public subnet, and then we want to enable the IP for me to log into that public subnet. Rest of them are the same. Next, add tag, I will do name. I think I have Bastion Host AWS Cloud HS. Next. Actually, let me try seeing something here. So we'll just use the existing group. We don't have any. So I think we can use the same security for Bastion, but let's just keep it. Okay, so we'll add HTTP and we'll make sure. So if I were you, I would have this question, why I'm using this is the same and this is the same port I allowed, and I used the previous one with the same port that allowed, and why the difference. So what I'm doing is I'm creating another security group which is only for Bastion Host. This is public facing. The other one is it's not public facing, it's private. But what I'm going to do is I also allowed HTTP in 3389 because I wanted to remote in from public to private. But I also put HTTP in there only because I will use a load balancer, and that load balancer will connect. Load balancer will listen to port 80 and will connect to HTTP port 80. Once we get there, I'll show you what I mean. So just don't get confused. If you have any question, feel free to message me or leave a comment. I'll create another. Actually, I already have one. I'll just use that one. Hit next, and then view. All right, so we have deployed at least 3 machines. Once again, I want to make sure that so we have deployed 3 machines. These are running in privates. These 2 are running in private. You can see there's no public IP. No public IP, but this is on private. This is on private subnet, so this would have a public IP, and we got this. What the plan is to install IaaS on the private machine, and then also on a jump box. First, we need to install. Once we need to get into this jump box so that we can connect to our virtual machine here. Okay, so let me explain a little bit further here. So this is the diagram that is to deploy the solution here. You can see that we have one jump server in our public subnet, and then we have 1 IaaS, 1 and IaaS2, and an RDS in private subnet. So the goal is to we install the internet gateway. So if I do this, the goal is that the traffic will come from here and will go into web server 1, or you can do anything, web server 1, and then web server you can connect to web server web server 1 can connect to web server 2, or a jumpbox can connect to web server 3. Also, we want to make sure that the jumpbox can also connect to RDS, but for now what we'll do is we'll just use these machine to connect to RDS. So what I'm trying to say is, instead of using jumpbox, we'll just use these machine to connect to RDS. Okay, it makes sense. And then in the end, all these can connect to internet via net gateway. It will go out and do google.com or whatever it needs. Hope this makes sense. I will continue to explain in a bit in a better way. Again, if I go up here on this slide, that jump box can connect to this machine, and it will go to connect to all these machines, and then these machines can connect to. I'm not allowing this machine to connect to internet, so basically we'll just remove this one here. We'll just use these machines to connect to RDS. Okay, and then all these two can connect to NAT gateway. Let's not waste time. Let's go up here and let's start to connect with Bastion Host. We want to make sure we have our IP. Copy this IP address. Want to make sure that I have a password. So I have the password under Hammad. Click here, and once we get to Hammad, you will hit decrypt password. Once you hit in private key, yeah, we have to use Bastion Host this one, my bad. And then hit decrypt, and I have the password. So now we're gonna connect to this Bastion Host. Okay, we'll connect. Actually, we'll use my tool, Mobox. This is a third-party tool that I use to connect to all the machines. I will allow, and we'll just use a temporary. We'll give a different IP, administrative password. Click OK, and I would connect. Password, I think I did copy, but let me go back here and I paste here and click OK. So now we are remoting into our Bastion host, and in that Bastion host we will basically, now we have a machine that is going to our public subnet, and that public subnet we will connect to, through this public subnet we will connect to our private subnet. There's no way for me to connect to my private subnet because there's no public IP. So only way is through private IP. Let it load, and once that loads, we're gonna go into remoting into our private subnet machines, and from there we will deploy IIS machines. So let's get to web server 1. We don't have public. We'll copy the IP, and then yes. Let it load a little bit. Okay, the machine is loaded. I am going to go to Server Manager for a second. I won't be installing IIS on this one, but I would want to make sure that integrated enhanced security is turned off so that I don't have to get these pop-up messages every time I open Internet Explorer. I get here and I will turn off integrated security. I don't have to turn off the firewall. I would not recommend if you're in production, but for now I'll just turn off just for the sake of it, of not getting into any further prompts. Like, okay, you should not be doing that if you're in a productive environment. Just want to make sure that you understand. Click here, open Internet Explorer. I already copied the IP for our private subnet. Private IP for that machine. We'll go back here. I think the command to launch a msstc for our, and then we'll just hit paste and we'll connect. Now we are connecting to our subnet 3, and same, the password administrator, and then we'll come here, we'll connect and decrypt the password. I think the password I took was from Hammad. You can see it says that, hey, it's looking for Hammad. Keep here. I'll just use this one and come here and decrypt. Now I have the password. I'll get back to my window. Okay, and it is going to let me log into our EC2 instance in Subnet 3. Same thing, what we're going to do is we will do ST remote desktop into our second subnet, second machine. Come here. Web server 2, copy the IP, go back here, type in this, and hit connect. Same thing, I would just go back and get a password. I think it would ask me to do the same thing, get a password from Hammad. Decrypt, copy the password, minimize this window, log in as administrator, and click OK. So far we have basically installed 2 IIS servers. Well, not yet. We have deployed 2 machines, and in which we will be deploying IIS servers, and these are on private subnet. So what we did, we use Jumpbox, which is a Bastion host, which is on public facing, to piggyback into Subnet 3 and Subnet 4, which is private subnet, not exposed to internet. I will minimize this for a second. Yes. And this is, while this is loading, I'm going to go back into our, this is already ready. We will start installing IIS. Okay, for the sake of time, I will be making another part 2 for the same project. I'll show you how to install IIS. Let's do that. Why don't we just create another video, part 2, to install IIS, and then we will continue in our second video, so that it's 40 minutes already, so I don't want to like lengthier this video. So just to recap, so far we have deployed 3 machines, 1 Bastion host, and then 1 VM. We haven't done IIS, we have just installed the machines on Subnet 3, Subnet 4, and a Bastion host. Now what we're going to do is, in our next video, we will install IIS on Subnet 3 machine and Subnet 4 machine, and then we also will deploy an RDS machine as well. So till then, please join, if you have time, feel free to join me on my part 2 of this video, and thank you for joining Cloud with Hammad.